Today's podcast is sponsored by Bodibro. Bodibro are a sportswear company based in County Wexford. Be sure to check out their website and social media accounts, and I will leave the links to them in the video description. So Niall, thanks very much for coming on. How have you been managing the last 2 or 3 months in these strange times?
Yeah, all good there. Thanks. I suppose I'm a little bit used to it myself personally. I suppose I work for myself. I'm self-employed, so I'd often be used to working on my own and a bit of solitary. So I won't say I enjoyed it. It's probably not the right thing to say, but the first few weeks were kind of a good time to reflect and just look at things from different perspectives in terms of work and in terms of career and relationships and family and stuff like that, to be able to connect a bit more with people and stuff. So obviously it's a difficult time for everybody. It's a bit of unknown territory, but yeah, look, I've been okay. I suppose I'm starting.
Offaly, so you made your debut, was it in 2004?
2003.
So you just a year earlier as well.
Yeah. I was actually seeing there so many the leaving certs on now at the moment. Well, it should be on now at the minute.
Yeah.
And I made my debut against Laois in 2003. I was only 17, so I was still doing the leaving cert at the time. Well, I hadn't started it yet. It was 2 days before the leaving cert started. So, so 2003, 17. So it's a long time ago. It only seems like yesterday, but it's a long time ago now.
Yeah, joining that young as well, even with the leaving cert, must have been hard at the time to sort of balance both.
Yeah, look at it was. I suppose I would have played minor under 21 that year, and then I think we were beaten by Louth in the first round of the minor championship. The week before off, we played Laois, and just the county secretary came to me after the minor game and said the seniors wanted to come training tomorrow morning. That was a Sunday morning, so I went in and. Sure, look at the time when you're young, and I suppose me definitely at that age, all I wanted to do was go and advance to the next level as quickly as possible. So for me, it was kind of, not that I was expecting it in one sense, but I kind of thought, I was good enough to be able to play at that level. So I was delighted, to be honest. Some of my teachers weren't too happy that I was playing football a few days before the leaving cert, but it wasn't on my radar probably at the time that it was going to be an issue. So we just got on with it.
Yeah, you only actually played in one Leinster final in 2006. What was that whole experience like? I know you lost probably, was it 8 or 9 in the end, but playing in a Leinster final for Offaly, Croke Park must have been something you're proud of.
Yeah, absolutely, and it was it was a good time actually around the mid 2000s, because a lot of teams were a very similar level. So you'd Westmeath, Laois, Kildare, Dublin, Meath as well. Wexford actually at the time as well were quite strong. And we kind of all got a turn around that time of getting the chance to play in a Leinster final. And I just met, like, even for Dublin at that time, Leinster final was massive for them as well. They hadn't won All Ireland obviously in a long number of years, and they were building towards it. But like every weekend, it was the boom time as well. So every game that was in Croke Park that time was full. There was 70,000 at it, and that game was sold out. It was a full house. So I remember running out onto the field, and it was a surreal atmosphere. I suppose the weather was a great day as well for a game, and I suppose when you're dreaming of playing football when you're younger about the big days you want to play in are full in front of a full house in Croke Park. So that was brilliant to get to experience that. I'll never forget the parade. We were parading around the field and before the game, and looking up onto the hill, and it was full of blue, like it was blue everywhere. But in one little pocket, there was about 3 or 4 Offaly guys in one pocket, and I just never forget looking down and waving down at the team. But look, it was a great experience. We actually played very well in the first half. We were well in the game actually, and just Dublin got a bit of a run on us just after half time, and we still managed to get it back to 3 or 4 points with about 10 or so minutes to go, and they kind of pulled away then in the end. But look at it was a good day. I suppose we would have hoped to have built on that then in the years to come after, but it wasn't to be, unfortunately. But yeah, look, I suppose from a childhood dream point of view, it was great to be able to experience it.
As you said there, probably the noughties, and Leinster was very competitive. Like Dublin weren't running. I know they won a good few, but they weren't like steamrolling teams like they are now. Is it difficult playing in Leinster nowadays, knowing that probably Dublin are going to win it every year?
Look, it's a different experience, absolutely, because I suppose I'm probably playing with guys now who have never experienced anything other than Dublin being dominant in Leinster. Whereas when I would have started out, that wasn't the case. So I'd be, I suppose, of the opinion that it could turn around. Not necessarily very quickly, but I do believe that if a lot of counties get their houses in order, that someone could be there to challenge them pretty soon. It's just, I suppose, from a professional level and a financial level, and obviously playing numbers level as well, it's very, very difficult to consistently be playing at that level for a lot of counties, simply because you're pulling from the same pool of players year in, year out. And those same players are playing your Burn Cup matches, they're playing all the league matches, and then they're playing in championship matches, whereas the stronger squads with the likes of Dublin probably have, they can afford to give guys rest during the league. They can kind of build them and try and peak for certain stages of the year, which, like for us, a big ambition or a big challenge for us is to try and get back up into Division 2 and then, aim for Division 1. And in order to do that, you need to be, back training in October, November, I should say. And then you're building towards January for the Burn Cup, and then you're trying to peak then start to peak for the start of the league. Whereas, counties with strong numbers don't necessarily have to be primarily focused on that. They're probably going to maintain their Division 1 status, whereas we need absolutely everybody, they're full of their fitness, full of their health to be able to, compete in Division 3, then to try and progress into Division 2. So it's challenging. And then you have other things like college and work, and got lads going travelling. You could lose a couple of players. Like even Dublin a couple of years ago would have lost probably 3 or 4 players. Jack McCaffrey went for a year, Paul Mannion, Rory O'Carroll, and like they're strong players, but they leave, and yet they probably just have the numbers there that they can replace them lads. So I suppose that's probably one of the biggest challenges at the moment, to try and close that gap. So I'd be very much of an optimist, and I would see that it is going to turn back in some way, shape, or form. I think other counties are kind of getting their houses in order around player development, around facilities as well for training and stuff. So hopefully over the next couple of years it'll become back a little bit more competitive, because I think the sport kind of needs it. I think from a supporter's point of view, there is no better feeling or no better day out than going into Croke Park when two teams are competing, and supporters believe that their side have a chance, and that's probably not been there in the last number of years.
Yeah, have you even seen the last 10 years maybe, more lads maybe travel to America from like the smaller counties that they mightn't think they have a chance of winning anything in the summer, and lose your first Leinster game, lose your first qualifier game, and it's over. So like nearly what's the point of training? Because you're training just as hard as the likes of Dublin, Kerry. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, and it's a big issue in terms of this from a sporting point of view, because ultimately, and like we see the thing around the tier 2 now at the moment, and it's been we're told that it's around the idea of like to help promote the game, or to give someone a lower tier county something to aim for or whatever, I suppose. But from my perspective, and I suppose the era that I would have started playing in, everyone had an opportunity to win a Leinster Championship. Everyone would have felt on any given day that they could beat anybody, and I don't see why that should change. In one sense, I do believe that if everybody gets the support that they need in order to nurture their squads and nurture their players and get enough professional advice in terms of preparation for squads, that teams can't become ultra competitive against one another. But that is what's happened, unfortunately. If a player decides, if they play in the league, if they're going to end up in Division 3, Division 4, they see their path through Leinster or Munster or wherever it might be, and think, we don't really have much of a chance here in terms of getting to a provincial final or whatever. Like, the option is there for guys who are probably students, a lot of them who don't, have full-time jobs. They need a few bob. They're able to go over to America, work, nice weather, play a bit of ball, get money saved or whatever it is, and be able to come back then and start back in college or whatever then in September. So it's like, you can see why people do it. But that's difficult then as well for squads, because if you're in a squad that's there's a lot of guys that are there and they're trying to achieve something, they're trying to improve and try to get better, that can really suck the life and the energy out of a squad if 2 or 3 guys decide to go to America for the summer. And it's absolutely within their right to do that. It's just, that's the difficulty, I suppose, that you're faced when it comes to those teams at that level, because you need everybody, and it's a tricky one, because in one sense, it'll be interesting to see when the thing does get back on, when the tier 2 kicks in, if players are actually going to stay around for it. I'd have my doubts whether they will or not, but it'll be interesting to see. We can't really say anything for now.
Yeah, do you like the concept of it, or would you sort of change the structure that they've proposed of the tier 2?
Yeah, I think of all the competitions that they've done, and of all the ways that they could have structured it, I think you probably could pick maybe 50 ones that are a little bit better. I suppose I would have played. It's funny, we played the national final in 06, and then in 2000 and 2007 they actually changed the league structure. So the league structure back then would have been 1A, 1B, 2A, 2B. But they changed it that the bottom 4 teams in 2A and the bottom 4 teams in 2B created the new Division 4. And of that new Division 4 then, those teams ended up that they were in the Tommy Murphy Cup if they lost their first round of the championship or didn't qualify for provincial final. So we ended up going from playing Division 1 football in 2006 to then end up playing Division 4 football in 2008. So I suppose the first thing I would like to see change would be that you bring back the 1A, 1B, 2A, 2B structure of leagues and split Division 1 and Division 2 into 1A and 1B, and then do the same with Division 3 and Division 4. Because ultimately there's actually very, very little difference between a large number of teams. And I just know for ourselves that if we were in, say, a new Division 2A, and if we got promoted and we're in Division 1A next year, and there'll probably be 4 teams that in that group or in that division that probably are a little bit too strong for us, but there'll probably be 3 teams in it that we actually could really compete against, and but you're learning from those teams then as well. And even if you do get relegated, it only takes you 1 year to get back up into that. Whereas at the moment, if you're in Division 4, it's a long road to get back up into Division 1. And as I mentioned, all those other parameters that come into play then around players that are going travelling or in college or dropping off a panel for a couple of years and coming back on, like all those things have to be taken into account. So a player or a squad or a county team doesn't get a really good strong run at it because they're losing players here and there and they're only committing maybe for 2 or 3 years at a time. So I'd love to see that come back first, but also even in terms of the tier 2, that at some stage if you do win it, that you're exempt from it the following year, that you're back into the All-Ireland Championship that year. Like there needs to be some incentive for teams to want to actually play in it. Now to say that it's going to be promoted and advertised through television and it's going to be played before All-Ireland semi-finals or whatever, I don't know if maybe, but I don't know if that would actually get players excited about it, because most of those guys that are playing are very, very committed obviously to their clubs as well. And usually when the championship finishes, like they're just happy to go back and play with their club and they want to get the club championship started because that's obviously their next on the agenda. So I don't know if lads would be willing to sacrifice 3, 4, 5 weeks of playing in a competition that they don't really want to play in without actually, missing from their club then as well.
Yeah, it's even the number of games probably in the summer that the lower counties play. Because I think this tier 2, if you lose your first provincial and lose the first round of the tier 2, you're still only getting 2 games. So it's probably, even if you had the league sort of format, you get 6, 7 games in the summer, and it's great for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think that's I suppose even like there's lots of different ways that you could design it. Even if it was a case of doing, I don't know, doing groups of 4 and you play 3 round robin games, and the top 2 go into semi-finals and then on to a final or whatever. But again, I suppose at that point you're still only playing the same teams that you've been playing all along. So you're still playing the same teams you've been playing from Division 3 and Division 4 for those probably previous 3 or 4 years anyway. So you're not getting exposed to that higher level. And when you're not getting exposed to that higher level, you're never going to learn. You're never, like, just for an example, we played in 2006. As I say, we were in Division 1A, or I'm not sure what 1A or 1B, and like we would have played Dublin in Parnell Park. We had Tyrone, who were Ireland champions, came to Tullamore. We played Mayo in Castlebar. We had Fermanagh away. We played Cork in Tullamore. We had Monaghan at home. There was someone else as well, but you didn't have time to dwell on it. So if you got beaten in one of the games, you didn't have like 6 months to dwell on it, because okay, we actually have another big game coming down. And what ended up, and we ended up getting, we stayed in Division 1 in 2005, but we got relegated in 06, and only on score difference. And while we got relegated and it was disappointing, it actually set us up for the summer then, because we'd been with experience playing against these better teams, I suppose, or these higher level teams. And because of that, then you're on a better, you know the game a little bit better, and you know your opponents better, and you know what it takes now to try and stay and maintain yourself at that level. So Division 3, Division 4 teams aren't getting exposed to that on a regular basis. It might be once off throughout the year. So take a team in Munster, like, I don't know, Clare maybe, for example, or Tipperary, for example. They might play Kerry once a year. That's their one time that year to play it, because that's the only time they get to play them at that level. Whereas if they got a little bit more consistency throughout the year, they'll learn, and and plus, from a supporter's point of view, it gets the support around the county. Lads are more engaged in it. it gets people excited that there's a high profile team coming to town. And also from a player's perspective, players want to play against those teams. They're interested in playing against those teams, and it's different. Like I don't know how many times over the last 4 or 5 years we've played against Longford, and like you're just going, it's just the same, the same process over and over again. And not that it's nobody's fault. It's just, you'd like to get more exposure to a higher level. But I know the argument is, well, you have to earn the right to get to that higher level. But as I mentioned, there's all these different other ingredients you need to take into account when you're talking about this type of stuff. It's not just like skill level or the quality of that each team have. It's way more than that. It's all the other things that I mentioned before, like around education, lads in college, lads going traveling, lads just not committing for whatever reason, injuries, all these things play a part.
Yeah, it's even the Division 3 and 4. I was talking to Conor Sweeney there a few days ago, and he even named the best 15 players he played with in the midfield. He had Peter Atchison of Tipperary and Gary Brennan, and I was nearly saying these players can probably get the recognition they deserve because there's no media exposure, the games aren't on the television. So if they are going to do the Tier 2, you'd have to think they have to do it right.
Yeah, but that's, again, I suppose, like the main competition is your All-Ireland Championship, and that's the one I suppose the supporters get excited about. That's the one kids get excited about. And until you get to a level where you're competing at that and competing there consistently, you kind of just get lost, and your county or your squad will get lost. Like, don't get me wrong, the true football supporters will know, like, they'll know all the good players, or they'll know whatever, doesn't matter what county they're from, they'll not be able to identify them and they'll be able to spot them. But it's your general, kids that are growing up, like, they gravitate towards what they see in television, they gravitate towards people that get the higher profiles and stuff like that. So, again, that's probably where a challenge is for say the counties that are in the Division 3, Division 4 bracket, and even Division 2 bracket, because, as I say, there's so little difference. You'll probably take the top maybe 6 teams at the moment in Ireland would probably have a really realistic chance of winning the All-Ireland. And that's only a very, very small minority. So, it's the rest of them that I'd be looking to improve and to help them get up to that level, as opposed to not just focusing on the top 4 or 6 and saying, okay, well, these are the ones that are driving the show. Well, actually, why is that? Why not try and help everybody else to try and get up to that level? And then at least we can have a pure All-Ireland Championship where everyone is competing at the same level.
Yeah, do you think it's even a financial thing that the GA might have to look at, just to help these counties in Division 3 and 4 to sort of pick themselves up and get closer to teams in Division 1 and 2?
Yeah, it could be a case, or it also could be a case of maybe having a cap in terms of team spending, in terms of what every squad can spend in terms of preparation and stuff. Because that's, like, this is funny as well. This might sound completely against what I'm talking about, but even in the midst of this, I suppose the pandemic, you realise how unimportant sport is to a large degree, because, like, we're not, like, life still goes on without it, but at the same time you realise how important it is. So it has 2 sides to it. But, like, I've experienced this many times playing with Offaly and playing with the club, that after a big game you put everything into it and you win the game and it's brilliant and you're celebrating and everyone's in great form, but that feeling goes away after maybe a day or 2, and then you're looking to the next game. So, like, it's never really going to satisfy you. So when you actually step back from it all, you think, well, why are we spending so much money on this sport, an amateur sport, in order, like, I often laugh, like, when someone wins the All-Ireland in September or August as it is now, that the championship, the draw for the following year, is on in November. So straight away people are thinking to next year, like, it's over and it's done. So, okay, we want the next year. So, like, when you're spending so much money on something like that, you're thinking, well, not that what's the point, because look, obviously everyone's invested in it, but ultimately, I just like to see something where, if it meant that there was a cap in terms of payment, in terms of expenses that people are able to pay out, in terms of preparing their teams, I think that would have a massive impact. And also then in terms of, I suppose that would filter down then towards, coaching and development then for strength and conditioning development, all that type of stuff for players then as well. But again, I'm not the boss in terms of how the GA works, so there could be a thing in the next couple of years where, they're looking to turn professional, and that could be a whole totally different ballgame altogether,
Yeah, would you even have noticed the last 10, 15 years going through that trainings and everything it's not professional, but has professional aspects to it?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. There's been, I suppose you don't really notice it gradually because you're kind of just, you arrive in one year and there's somebody new there that's bringing in a different element to it in terms of whatever strength and conditioning, if it's, you're stretching, you're, whatever it might be, nutrition, a whole lot of different stuff. And I suppose you don't really notice it because it happens gradually because, they're kind of been added year on year, but it's only when you stop and look back to what was there when I started and then you look, Jesus, it's way further down the road. Even small things like in terms of how you prepare your body even to train before you train. So like I remember we played a county final back around 2004 and we used to, as a warm-up, we just go out onto the main field, run across a couple of times, do a bit of kicking, a bit of shooting, and away you go. Whereas now, like you'll be an hour and 10 in the dressing room before the game doing your prep work, your stretching, everything else that goes with it before you actually hit the pitch. And they're only little small things, but it just means like there's a lot more science involved now than probably what there was before. Some might say even maybe too much, but even in terms of the analysis and all the type of stuff that goes with it, like it's just been gradually, it's definitely like there's so much more there. And it's probably not, obviously it's not professional, but it's not far off it, like in terms of the preparation. I suppose from a financial point of view, it's obviously not, but in terms of the prep and stuff that's there, it would take very, very little. There's very little extra that can be added to a setup to make it any more professional than what, let's say, a professional sport would have at the moment.
Yeah, we'll move on to a topic I suppose you've spoken about openly over the years. The gambling addiction. I suppose start off anyways. How did it come about? Was it just a few basic bets at a weekend?
Yeah, I suppose that would have been the initial way it started. I remember going to the Kilbeggan races when I was, I'd say we were about 9 or 10, and with my family, and that was only 20 minutes, 25 minutes away from our home house. So I remember going, just be once a year we'd go, and maybe I think one time an aunt of mine gave me like £10 in pound coins to go and put a bet on a race. So that was my first ever introduction, really, or time that I can remember I ever had a bet. And I remember winning once. I think I backed a horse at about 9-1, and I got a tenner back. And sure, yourself, it's only whatever 11 or 12, thinking it was great. But I only probably would have really started around 15, 16, I think, when the bookies opened up in Road Village, where I'm from, and used to go there most Saturday mornings, or most Saturdays, I should say, with about €50 in my pocket to, say, look, I'll have maybe 10 €5 bets or whatever it might be throughout the day. And if they won, great. If not, it wasn't the biggest, disaster in the world, because I kind of set that money aside. So that's kind of where it started. I used to work in the pub locally as well, and there were a lot of people in having a few bets, and you want to be celebrating if they won, and the adrenaline rush of them winning and celebrating and having a few drinks and the slagging and everything that goes with it. Just something really about that really just got to me. I went, Jesus, that looks like a lot of fun. I'd love to, that looks like, to me to be a lot of fun. And I'll be honest, I was always interested in having nice things or wanting to have nice things. And if I seen someone having a few bets and winning money and going, Jesus, well, that could be a way of earning money to do this X, Y, or Z. And I suppose over a period of time, you start to notice that, the Saturday turns into Saturday and the Sunday, and then eventually it's Monday. And I was in college at the time then as well, around 18, 19, a lot of free time up in Dublin. So I'd find between classes, maybe nipping out to Paddy Power for a couple of hours, and, working maybe still in the pub at the weekends, earning a few bob. I was on a sports scholarship in UCD at the time as well. I was getting a grant from the government to go to college. So I had a nice few bob to be playing around with. But I just started to notice then the amounts of money started to get a bit higher, and the frequency of my gambling got a lot higher as well. And before I probably knew it, it was a little bit out of control. It wasn't out of control to the point where financially it was impacting me, but definitely, well, it was impacting me financially. I was losing money, but it hadn't become a problem that other people could see yet, if that makes sense. So I was kind of able to keep it under wraps as best I could. But slowly but surely that started to unravel a little bit as well. And yeah, it was tough. It was tough for a couple of years, because you're sort of in jobs, and I was working in different jobs over the years as well, and never really able to do what I wanted to do, because I was always spending, every time I get paid on a Friday or a Saturday or whatever it was, I'd always end up going to the bookies and trying to win more. Sometimes I would win, but more often than not, I would have given it back over the next couple of days, and then it was back to square one, starting again.
Yeah, was it even at the start just to keep interested in an event or something, that you feel involved nearly watching this race match or something like that?
Yes, but I only really ever gambled on horses and dogs, to be honest. And one of the big things I noticed when I stopped, like when I was reflecting back on it, and when I went for treatment, and one of the things was to realise is why was I actually doing it. So what was the reasons behind it all? I suppose one of the big reasons was like I loved that rush of, like I mentioned earlier, around playing in front of in Crow Park, and
Yeah.
the adrenaline rush that gives you and that buzz, and like I'd always gravitate towards that sort of a feeling when it comes to sport. Something that I really, really loved, and I hated it at the same time. You get that kind of nervousness before a game and stuff like that. But once it started, you're running on adrenaline, and I suppose was able to replicate that in a bookies if I was backing a horse. So I'd often see that, like maybe even after a big game or whatever, when everyone would go back to work and go back to normal, and I'd be on this high after a game, and you'd be buzzing kind of, and some people would often find it hard to sleep and stuff. And I'd try and keep that high going as long as possible. And for me, gambling was the only way that I could do that. Like I was never a big drinker. I never took drugs in my life. But once I placed a bet, it was as if I just couldn't stop. I had to stay there. I had to keep going until either all my money was gone, or the race isn't finished, or the bookies was closing, or whatever it was. So, yeah, definitely. And then as well, as I said, I only backed on horses and dogs. So, like a horse race would be maximum 4 minutes. So you're looking at that race, it's 4 minutes, and then next thing you're straight into the next one, and then you're straight into the next one. So you're replicating that high, every couple of minutes. So, it's there's no time to relax there. Like there's no time to settle, to sit down and actually take stock of what you're doing. You're just in the middle of it, and it's just relentless. You can't. It's complete lack of control. And so that's probably one of the hardest thing people try to understand. They find it difficult to understand. Why can't you just stop? But once you're in the middle of that, you're just not thinking. It's literally you're on autopilot. That next bet, next bet, next bet. And it's only the realization only will hit you of the enormity of what you've done when you've finished it, and you're sitting in the car and you're driving home going, oh God, I've no money to do this, I've no money to do that, or I owe this person money. And so it is. It's definitely a roller coaster of emotions. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, would you have been then chasing sort of losses if you had lost 10 or 20 on that race, you'd try and win that back? And even though the ones you'd win, you might probably bet that money you've won away on other horses and dogs.
Yeah, absolutely. I suppose that's the nature of it, I suppose, is even that's why I'm terrified of even placing the bet. To this day, I'd be terrified to go back, because I know when I started gambling, it was like small bets in terms of €5 and stuff, but I could probably go back today and have a €5 bet, but I know it wouldn't stop at that, because the thought and the feeling of losing automatically trigger this response to try and get it back. And I suppose I should say as well, like over the years while I was gambling, like I would have won a lot of times. There would have been times where I would have won large sums of money in a very, very short period of time. And I suppose what that does is it plants a seed in your brain to think, well, I've done it before, I can do it again. So no matter how bad the loss has got or how deep in a hole you get, I'd always say to myself, well, I've done it before. I was able to win X amount of money before. I'll be able to do it again. All I need is, money. All I need is €50 or €100 to go in and have one bet. Like I remember one day I used to work in a mortgage brokerage in Tullamore. I remember going to my lunch one day with €20. Had my lunch, went down to town, went into the bookies with €20, put a bet on a horse, I think at 4-1. It won, got back €100, and put €100 on a dog at 3-1, and it won, and I got back €400.
Yeah.
So like I'm after turning €20 into €400 in like 15 minutes, and I was probably earning about €500 a week in wages. So like it's easy to see how people can get sucked into that world, but yeah, once the losses start, you try to chase them back, and obviously, I think most people, well, I definitely would have had a preconceived idea of what my life should look like. And when I was in the bookies and losing money, that wasn't the way it was supposed to be. So I'd always try and win back the money to think this is what I need in terms of, to live the life that I should be leading. Or actually, I often say this, it actually hasn't been it's only been since I stopped gambling that I've been able to have and achieve and do a lot of the things that I wanted to do while I was gambling. It's only since I've stepped back and stopped that, like things like going on holidays, or being able to get, have a car, or, rent a place on your own, or live in your own house, all the type of stuff. These are all things that I said, she said, if I win this amount of money, I'll do that. Or if I win this amount of money, I'll do this. But it's only actually since I stopped gambling, and you take that out of the equation, that actually I was able to do all of those other things.
Was it yourself that knew that you were out of control, or was it someone else that found out? How did the sort of stopping happen?
Yeah, I suppose people would have definitely thought I was out of control in certain ways, and not that I was erratic or anything like that, but I suppose my mood would have been very, very low and up and down. And if I won money, I'd be on a bit of a high, and if I lost, I'd be down, and I wouldn't really talk too much to people. I'd started isolate a lot then as well. I'd be hiding away from people who wouldn't answer the phone and stuff like that. I always knew, like I knew probably for 3 or 4 years before I stopped gambling that I had a problem with it. And I used to get lots of signs all the time that I shouldn't be doing what I was doing. I
Yeah.
could walk out of a bookies, I'd meet someone on the street that I know I shouldn't have met, or that would tell my father, or would tell somebody that they see me in the bookies, or blah blah blah. And it would always be at the wrong time I'd meet the people. So like I was getting lots of signs to actually put my hand up and ask for a bit of help, but I never really did until my father called down to my house one night. Just basically started questioning me about it. He said, "Look, I know you're in trouble. There's something going on. You just have to tell us, blah blah blah." So I basically denied it for about 25 minutes to half an hour with him, and then eventually I just said, "Look," I said, "I'm gambling. Can't stop. I've no idea how to stop." And that was basically it. I suppose the big thing from that was the massive relief that I actually got from that was incredible in terms of the weight off my shoulders and telling him. And I always put that down to be one of my, that was my one really, really good decision. And from that one really, really good decision happened, or like a lot of really, really good things happened on the back of that. So that was a Monday night. I met an addiction counsellor on the Tuesday, went for an assessment in the treatment centre on the Friday, and then went in for treatment to follow on Wednesday. So it all happened very, very quickly after that in terms of getting help.
Yeah, is that probably the hardest thing, even for people with drug problems, alcohol, gambling, is just admitting to that one person that they have a problem?
Yeah, I think the first step definitely is admitting that there's a problem there. I suppose there are a lot of people who admit that there's a problem, but then they still go back and they relapse, and they find it very difficult to get out of that mindset, and that's a challenge in itself. I just think for me, when I went for treatment, I was absolutely ready to stop gambling. I think life at that time, it just really got to a stage where it just was not enjoyable anymore. I wasn't really, I didn't like the person that I was after kind of becoming. It wasn't that I was doing anything overly bad or anything like that, but I just wasn't myself. I was down a lot. My mood was very, very low. Wasn't really having enjoyment in anything really. Didn't really know who I was. Was always trying to. The only place I really felt comfortable was going into a bookies, and that's obviously not a good thing. So, but yeah, the first thing for anyone really is to admit that there's a problem, and then be open then to getting a bit of help and getting support, and actually trusting in people who've been there and done that before you, to say, okay, well, this is after working for them, it can work for me as well, and to really, really be open to that. I suppose that's one of the biggest challenges, because when you're in the middle of an addiction, you're trying to control every situation. What do you say to people? What lie did you tell yesterday? You're trying to control all of these scenarios, and when you come into recovery, it's actually about letting go of that control. And the only way, and this works for everybody in society really, it's not necessarily just people that are in in recovery or in addiction. I think sometimes we think we have control over all these situations, or we try to control the worlds that we live in, because that's what keeps us comfortable. But it's actually when you step outside of that and say, okay, I'm just not going to try and control anything, just only going to control my own behavior, how I interact with people. And by doing that, then just amazing opportunities start happening, and stuff starts to happen that like lots of things would have happened to me over the last number of years, in terms of just opportunities with work and opportunities with sport, and being able to go traveling and stuff, but only because you now have an open mind to these things, and you're actually you're open to them happening. Whereas when you're in the middle of an addiction, you're trying to control all of those scenarios, and that's probably one of the biggest issues with people who, as I said before, come into recovery, is actually letting go of that control and trusting that everything's going to be okay.
Yeah, would you say nowadays it'd be tougher to even avoid it with online apps and everything? And then even watching sport on the television, halftime, the adverts will be nearly, you might see 2 or 3 betting companies advertising halftime specials and all that. So is it even tougher nowadays to avoid it?
Yeah, I think so. I suppose I'm probably hyper aware of it in terms of when it comes to the advertising side. And I do feel sorry for people who, I suppose, maybe in the middle of it, like I was really lucky in terms of, I've got a really, really good education around the addiction. I know a lot of the reasons why I was gambling, and I know a lot of the things I need to avoid in order for me not to go back there. So a lot of the triggers, so things like advertisements, things like watching racing on the television, things like reading the racing section of a newspaper, doing the lotto, like these are all little triggers. Even, you know, even emotionally, if I feel angry about something, or I feel like, geez, I want to disappear away from the world for the next couple of hours, well, that for me can be a trigger that, you know, I'm actually not really in a really good place, so I need to reach out or need to reach into a support network. So I got really good education around that. So if a gambling ad comes on the television now, like I just mute it, or I turn off the television, or I change the channel, or same if I'm driving in the car and the radio station comes on, whatever. And I'm aware of it. Whereas there could be somebody that's in the middle of an addiction. They might have left the bookies today. I might, right, that's it, never gambling again. Sick of this, blah blah blah. They go home then that night watching sport and television or whatever it might be. Next thing, an ad comes up for whatever a bookmakers and says, if you join online, get a €50 free bet or whatever it is. They're straight back, like their mind is thinking, okay, this could be my ticket out. So it's back to me with the money, the €20 bet I did on my lunch break and work. I'm thinking, well, that €20 made me €400. So they'll be thinking, well, I can have the same outcome here today, because you can be guaranteed at some stage day one as well. So they're thinking, this will get me out of the hole. And it might actually get them out of the hole, but it's only going to prolong the agony, because they can be guaranteed. It might be 6 months, a year, 1 month, 2 years, whatever it might be, but they eventually are going to fall again, and they're going to be back at square one. So, and just to, as well, there, just to get across that message, like a lot of people talk about gambling and they say like a recovery that, and I probably haven't been as probably haven't articulated this as well as probably what I have to, or probably what I should have, but like there is the financial side of gambling, and there is the placing the bet, the winning the money, but ultimately it's a lot, and probably more so 95% got to do with how a person deals with the world on a day-to-day basis. And some people really struggle with it. They really struggle with their environment where they live. They might have lost friends, they might have fallen out with somebody, they might have childhood trauma, they might have lost in a very important game, they might have messed up in a big game or whatever, and they're carrying all that stuff. And I suppose in a way it's kind of defined who they are, and because of that they'll reach for something to latch on to that makes them feel safe and makes them feel comfortable. And for sports people in particular, gambling is a very safe place for them to be able to go to do that, because it can be done on their own, it can be done quietly on the phone, through mobile apps, even going into a bookie, sitting there for a couple of hours, no one really talks to you, you're in your own little world, and you don't have to think, you know. So that's one of the biggest reasons why people take up gambling. And I suppose it reflects, it's not just people with addiction or in recovery, but that's like, that is a template for people in general, that, you know, if things start going, like even at the moment, a lot of people are probably going to struggle now in the middle of the pandemic, because they're just not used to this. This is something completely not in tune with their life. Whereas, and I don't mean, when this happened to me or when the pandemic started, I've been completely comfortable and relaxed in it. Maybe the odd day here and there going a little bit pissed off. He said he wouldn't mind going out for a game of golf or whatever a couple of weeks ago. But now I'm going, like, but the first few weeks this is fine. I have no control over it. All I can control is what do I do on a daily basis, and how do you reach into your network and your support network around you and stuff like that. So, just important for me to say that as well, because people can sometimes look at it and think, okay, it's a financial issue. It is, but it's actually much deeper than that.
Yeah, to wrap up, what would be sort of the main advice you'd give to anyone that might be just on the verge at the moment of the gambling addiction?
Yeah, I suppose the biggest thing, I suppose, ultimately is to admit it to somebody. Now, some people mightn't be comfortable talking to someone that they know, so it might mean that if they ring, say, the Gamblers Anonymous phone number, they might ring a counsellor, they could ring a friend from the next county or the next country, whatever it might be. But I think ultimately it's making that first step to actually admit that there's a problem. And the person that you tell, like, they more than likely won't have all the answers. But ultimately what they can do is they can help you find them in terms of who's the right people to talk to, how do you reach out for support. Like some of my best friends now are people that are in recovery, and I'll talk to them every day. Not about gambling, just about like, how are you getting on? How's life? You know, how's the family? You know, how's work going? Are you struggling? Everything okay? And it's just to have that support network around you, and to find them as well. So when you're in the middle of the addiction, you think there's nobody else in the world like me. I'm the only person who has this addiction. And I used to see some of my friends coming into the bookies, placing the bet, walking out the door, and you wouldn't see them again for like 2 months. I was going, how are they able to do that? What is wrong with me that I can't stop? But it's only when you actually stop, reach out for a bit of support, that you'd start to find there's other people out there that are in recovery that have done the exact same things that you've been doing. in terms of placing the same bet. The amounts of money might be a little bit different, the locations might be different, but ultimately the timeline and the stories and the effect it's had on that person generally is the exact same. So you get a lot of comfort from that then, knowing that there's other people out there. So ultimately the first thing is always is to ask for that bit of support, no matter who it's from. And again, from there, then you can start to plan, how to get a bit of help and how to get a bit of support for yourself.
Well, Niall, thanks very much for coming on and being so honest on that topic.
No worries, Dara. Thanks a million.
All right, thanks.